All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you for listening to this podcast or watching this podcast for this matter, because we are recording everything and we have a new guest today, John Jackson. Please give our audience a little bit of an overview of who you are and who you're with.
Sure. I am, my name is John Jackson. I've been a construction scheduler for around 40 years. I've been scheduling all kinds of projects over that period of time. I've run some very large scheduling teams. I've had consulting practice for many years on some of the largest types of projects in the country and some international. And then the last 30 years or so, I primarily worked in the dispute resolution. In addition to managing the consulting practice, I spend a lot of my time in dispute resolution, going through delay, focusing on delay issues. So that's a little bit about me. A few years ago, I started to automate a lot of those processes through computer software. I came into scheduling from a software development side 40 years ago, and I kind of got back into that a few years back and started, developing a product that we call Schedule Validator, which you can upload a schedule and it gives you all kinds of analysis pretty quick.
Yeah.
That's the short version.
That's the short version. No, I mean, it's, the time spans you mentioned, it's pretty, pretty long time,
Yeah.
40 years, 30 years. You've been around the block, I should say, in the industry. So that's very much appreciated. And I know that, I wouldn't be me because I'm Microsoft Project MVP back in the day in scheduling and project dynamic scheduling and all that. And I know some of the construction schedules are built in MS Project. Not typical, right? P6 is probably right the go-to for larger schedules. Is that what you're?
Yeah. I mean, Primavera early on got into the government contract side of things, and so they had a big advantage when particularly here in the U.S., where a lot of government agencies required the Primavera products. So yeah, P6 is definitely the majority of schedulers use P6. It's a very, very good tool. It's very reliable. MS Project though is used a lot. There's some other products out there. There's Asta Power Project out of the UK. That's a really good scheduling tool. A lot of those are, a lot of it comes down to good practices, right? You can use any of those tools if you utilize good practices for.
Can you build? And look, I know MS Project very well, just because of my background. P6 is not as not haven't been working with P6 for as much as been working with MS Project, but knowing all the intricacies and what's behind that so-called dynamic scheduling, right?
Right.
Would you feel that schedules that are built in Excel can still be analyzed and run and executed as good as as reliable as other tools? I know that you can't do a lot of things in Excel, but
well, I mean, the whole basis of critical path method, the CPM method, is you have your task, your scope, and your durations, your time, and those two elements you can do in Excel pretty well. The third element of CPM scheduling is the logic, right? And so the logic, it's kind of hard to do that in Excel. So the key there is if you have the logic is what determines, hey, this activity has been impacted or delayed. What's the flow through impact across all your network, right? And so without the
Mhm.
logic, you can't really do that very well. That's the
Yeah.
challenge with the Excel.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, a lot. It's still by far, if you look at the stats, the most popular project management tool in the world, with huge margins, a huge lead is Excel. Still, I mean, obviously, we're not talking about capital projects or uh, projects that
Sure.
require dynamic
Well,
scheduling.
even on projects where, I mean, I've been on many projects still. I mean, to this day, where they're multi, billion-dollar projects, and they do the master schedule and a critical path tool, Microsoft Project or P6 or Asta. But then when it comes down to a superintendent planning on what's coming up the next 3 weeks, like a look ahead schedule, almost all of them use Excel for that kind of stuff, right? Once again, I mean, the challenge from a scheduling standpoint is you have all of the scope, all of these tasks, and all of these dates. But in Excel, it doesn't show you this one's the critical path, unless you manually, look at your schedule to look at what's critical and you label it that way. That's really the only downside of the Excel. It's much easier to use, obviously, but without the logic and the calculation functionality, Excel's not going to really show you. I mean, I may be working on 10 things, but one of those things may be impacting the end date, right? And
Hmm.
so that's important. That's the downside of the Excel. And I see that a lot, particularly people managing the Excel, and they have those 10 tasks that are supposed to be worked on, but they're not prioritized, right? By which one's critical and which one's not critical. That's the only downside to that.
Um, yeah, the critical path. And I know that I just want to really talk quickly about the product and uh, what made you think that this is required. This is something that owners and contractors will like seeing, as far as this validation of the schedule. Uh, is this more of the FPL type of, "Hey, let's do this before we do anything. Let's before the construction hit the ground, right?" Or this is at which stage of the process this is something that really needed based on your experience.
Well, your number one issue is the quality of the schedule, right? Your CPM tool, your critical path method, is developed. The logic, durations, and everything is developed by doing the calculation, right? And so, if you have networks that are not complete, if you have missing relationships, all of those kind of things, your calculation is going to be limited. So you may not have the availability to rely on your critical path calculation if your quality is is not very good, right? So that's kind of like the first step in using a tool like Schedule Validator is, um, to making a determination. It's very easy to use. I can drop my schedule in there, and it'll give it a good score, right? And so if I get a certain score, I know that this is a pretty reliable calculation. It may be wrong, you know, it may be wrong. I may have things tied in correctly, but at least from a technical calculation standpoint, everything has a predecessor and successor, so it can calculate. So there's other parts of the tool as you start progressing, start looking at other functions, right? Like how well you're executing your work, like your schedule said you were going to do. If you're falling behind and the schedule's being manipulated to keep the end date from moving, right? All of those kind of things. It also does as the project starts progressing. But the first thing is quality. I mean, that's that's how the whole product started. You know, was just a quick way to drag and drop something there without having to open up P6 and, import the schedule and run all these checks on it. I could just drag and drop a file and it would tell me right there whether it's quality. Uh,
What What do you think the good quality schedule? What are the attributes of good quality schedule without running the tool? I mean, the tool
yeah,
will determine, but what is it? Is it uh, number of activities per dollar? Like say if you have, I don't know, $1 billion project, right? You're expected to have a certain benchmark level of breakdown.
right.
That is that one of the factors, for
Yeah, so
example?
you have there. We track. It varies. It gets reviewed by. We have a user conference every year, and schedulers get around and talk about this kind of stuff.
Uh-huh.
But we look around 20 things that we look at, and they're generally two different categories. One is a quality metric that is anything really that's going to impact the calculation, right? Whether it's missing logic ties, it has constraints in it that are forcing dates to occur on certain things instead of using the logic to do it. If you have, those are the big things. If you get those right, you're usually going to get a fairly good score.
Hmm.
So that there's the quality metrics, and then there's risk metrics associated with the schedule quality. And so those are metrics that may be correct, but it presents a high level of risk. For example, one of the things we look at is the percentage of activities that are on the critical path, right? That means that if I've got 50% of my activities in my scheduler are critical, that means that 50% of any event that might impact an activity is probably going to impact my end date, right? So it's just a higher risk as opposed to 20% of my activities being on the critical path. So there's those risk metrics that, it may be correct. It may be that 50% may be, that may be correct, but it's a high risk. And so it's really those two things. There's quality, making sure that they're, anything, if you have activities, and I don't want to get too complicated, but activities that are out of sequence, it's supposed to go A, B, C, and now it's going A, C, B, but you haven't changed the logic to reflect it. So it's just kind of, you're forcing dates, and now it's going to impact the calculations. And so there's those quality metrics and then the risk metrics. There's about 20 of them.
Got it. Got it. Yeah, it was always obviously uh, the integrity of the formulas, right? Of connectivity of everything. So we call it dynamic schedules. Anything has an impact on something, right?
Right.
And by moving anything, you kind of impacting other things. And it's interesting that amount of activities on the critical path. Do you also look at the types of the activities? So you may have 50% activities on a critical path that are, say, not risk, at a lower risk being delayed, versus 20% of the activities on the critical path that are prone to be delayed, you know, uh,
Yeah.
historically, or just by its own risk assessment, given the risk assessment for each of those
Right.
activities within those 20%. Do you look at that?
Oh yeah. Well, we have a Monte Carlo feature, right? That
Mhm.
will, I mean, that looks at we probably have, um, I don't know, I haven't looked lately, but hundreds of thousands of project schedules, and which is millions and millions of activities over time, over periods of time. Um, that we have a learning model that's learned all of that kind of stuff, so we can run simulations based on you upload a schedule, and it'll identify that kind of stuff. Where, hey, these you've got 20% of your activities on the critical path, but half of those are very high risk, right? So your probability of delay is pretty high. So that's more of a different function than just the quality of the schedule. That's looking at a risk model and running analysis on that.
All right. And um, maybe your favorite topic, which is project controls.
Sure.
Uh, um, that is that is something that everybody's trying to figure out. Different ways. Just because of the nature of some of these numbers, um, hosted or held on different systems, and making those calculations is not, it's an art in itself, right? How do you wh- how do you assess that? Do you assess this quality of the schedule as it relates to the project controls as well? How well it's everything is calculated, or how the baselines, what does that process look like?
Well, your project controls typically is kind of broken down into three general categories. One of your project controls is the whole contract management side of things, where you're managing the contract, change orders, potential change orders, changes, the resolution process for changes, all of that kind of stuff. That the cost, what a lot of people need to categorize as cost management or contract management, right? Managing from budget to buyout to execution, change orders, and closeout. The second general category of project controls is what we call document controls, right? It's the transmittals, what we call transaction controls. It's everything that's going back and forth, which facilitates all the change order controls, right? But you have to have everything from, we had a conflict in the field. I noted it in my daily reports. I initiated an RFI. The RFI gets transmitted all the way through the process, comes back. Yes, it's a potential change order. We, start processing those potential change orders, and it eventually gets included in all the way through. So the document control, managing all of those transactions, that's the second part. And most of the project control systems, they do. Those have been around for a long time, right? As the cost and document control primarily. I worked with a lot of packages over the years that manage that process. The scheduling has kind of been a lone. It's kind of been, that's the third component of project controls, and it's kind of been off on its own, right? Typically, um, you know, especially historically, 20 years ago, you had maybe one or two people on a project that even could read a schedule or understand a schedule, and certainly only probably had one person that had access to the schedule that could get the information, and then you relied on them to tell you what information you needed because you didn't know, what to look for in a schedule. So schedule's kind of been alone, kind of off on its own. And so one of the challenges that we've undertaken is to really change that whole process to where scheduling, number one, it's open. It's, you do have a scheduler that has specialty in these software packages that are out there, somewhat complicated, but we're taking that data and opening it up to all of the entire project. So all of these transactions, all of these changes, everything can look at it in a time frame, right? So your cost control, transaction control, document control, those are all managing the cost side of it, right? But if you put it in that schedule layer, if you add that schedule layer to it, it's like adding another dimension. Now all of that stuff is is in a time frame. And so I think that's where, our tools and ours specifically, but there's other competitors out there. But being able to tie that in successfully. So you not only know, what happened, but when things happened and what the impact was on the time frame. So that's my little project control spiel in a nutshell, but
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
kind of those fit together.
Yeah. I mean, it's been always becoming multidimensional multidimensional data model, that the time has a key component to it. Time is a very important dimension, and well, I've been working on this for quite a bit to build some of these models, and schedule and cost and tying this all together. That's a crucial part that makes enable these numbers to be actually calculated,
Right.
which I call, like, we need to know where we were, or where we are compared to where we're supposed to be, right?
Right. Right.
And what kind of impact does it have on schedule and cost? Um, well, I like to switch to stories, if you may, and I, I, I'm pretty sure over the years you had those defining moments in on the project, where things, I mean, typically things went either very well or things went wrong, or things had to be addressed. And if you can remember, reminded, or just come up, remember one of the stories, and tell us what it was, that would be great. But I'm looking for um, the biggest impact on the business, on the bottom line, from either mishandling the schedule or building the schedule that is not at the right quality. And what is the impact of that on the real project, in financial impact? um, it was. If you can, yeah.
Well, I mean, I could tell you any number of stories since this morning. As a matter of fact, I mean, it's like there's stories all the time. I have had a few that have really, had an impact on me and how I schedule. I tell one story quite frequently. It was one of those that really kind of changed the way I updated schedules. But I, had a client that called me one day and the project was falling behind, falling behind, falling behind. But the scheduler kept manipulating it to keep the end date from moving, kept doing things, cutting durations in the future or resequencing things, whatever, to keep the end date from moving, and reporting to the owner that they were on schedule.
Which is, in other words, kicking can down the road.
Kicking the can down the road. Yeah, squeeze and, putting it under pressure too.
Mm-hmm.
So, that my client was not aware of what was going on. All he knew was that the project was being reported as on schedule. But his client called him one day and just said, "Hey, your schedule's showing 3 months left, and we think you have 6 months left." And so he called his project manager to find out what was going on. And his project manager, first words out of his mouth was, "I quit." And so, he left, and it fell into that executive's lap to figure out what had happened. And he called me, and sure enough, that we got into it and realized that's what had been happening. They were falling behind and didn't want to report that they were falling behind. So at that point, I began to, not just look at the end date from a scheduling standpoint, but to look at where they said they were going to be last week. Where are they now? Are they behind where they said they're going to be? If the end date didn't move, I know they changed something if they're falling behind. They had to, on the critical path. So that was a big one, and then automating that analysis in software was a big one for me too. So that was probably one of the big, big stories. I've got a lot of them, for different things, making sure that, you have a consistent critical path, right? I've been in disputes where I'm testifying, and one of the schedulers that worked in our group was preparing schedules and wasn't following good practices. And it was kind of embarrassing, having to try to address that in litigation. And so, I learned to put together a good quality control program internally for that, so, there's like, that's another good one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Um, what what keeps you up at night when you're dealing with you know typical large project schedule and schedule, and you are either in the beginning, front loading, building the schedule at whatever level it is, or and analyzing the schedule, or in the middle of the project, tracking the quality of how things are going. What is your typical issue um that really that really bothers you
You know what?
these
I,
days?
yeah, the biggest thing that troubles me. I mean, that from there, I don't really have any issues that trouble me from business or a scheduling standpoint. I think the biggest challenge that I struggle with is when I have clients that I see things going on with their project. And, I tell people all the time, I'm not very smart, but I am old and I've seen a lot of stuff. I do have a lot of experience. And when I see a project headed a certain direction, and I know right where it's going because I've seen it 100 times, and a client you know, will say, "Oh, no, 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 we're going to work through this." I'm like, "No, you better document it. You better you better follow exactly what the contract says to do." Right. A lot of people will, I'll have projects where it's like, you need to do this. This is what the contract's telling you to do, but they don't want to offend anybody. They don't want to upset anybody with that, with writing a letter or, submitting a change order, or asking for extra time or whatever. And I tell them all the time, you need to just follow the contract. You can be very professional about it and say, "Hey, I'm only doing this because the contract says do it." But that's probably the biggest challenge. And sure enough, I mean, like I said, I've seen a lot of situations, and I have clients that'll say, "Oh, no, 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 we're going to work it out. The owner told me we're going to work it out." And I'm like, "Well, you better just follow the book in the meantime." And sure enough, they don't. And sure enough, they end up in dispute. And by the time they get to the dispute and the resolution process, you've got people that have left, you've got things that have changed, all the stuff that's old, and the resolution never turns out very good, right? So doing all the stuff by the book early on and just doing it very professionally, very cleanly, making sure your schedule's good. That's one component of it, and document it. But if it's been delayed, document it. Put it in. Go ahead and address it and come up with resolution. You have a lot more resolution opportunities early if you address things early. But anytime the project is just pushing things out, hoping that something's going to get resolved magically, it just never works that way. And sure enough, you end in
Mhm.
dispute. I mean, it's good for my business because I bill a lot of money for that. But when I'm
Disputes, right?
trying to, yeah, yeah. When I'm trying to help a client, let's avoid the dispute, right? And I
Yeah.
do that a lot. But that's probably the challenging thing to have to deal with. It's like, people that just,
Do you deal with insurance too, like insurance claims,
yeah,
including?
yeah. I mean, just anything that's delay related, I get
Mm,
to deal with it. So there's all kinds of insurance things. I've had
yeah.
cases where it was not really construction related, but it had issues with either project management or delays or whatever. Um, you know, I get involved in all kinds of.
So what you're saying is that your process needs to have the ability to document everything that is going on for the purpose of continuity of that documentation, and the ability to go back to it and repaint the picture, as it was at the time, to understand the causes of events that happened. Right?
Yeah,
That's right.
absolutely. Yeah, I had one of my clients, and this is a long time ago, but one of my clients said there's three D's in dispute resolution: document, document, and document. You know? So, I mean, documentation is the key, right? So, I mean, that's one of our efforts that we try to do. You know, whether it's with our schedulers and our software or whatever, is really come up with just good documentation, right? For a variety of reasons. If it's well documented, if you have an issue that's well documented, you're plugging in delay in a schedule, for an example. You're going to see what's going on, and you're going to have a much better ability to make good decisions, good resolution options early, right? If you're documenting it. And then certainly if you're coming back to it after the fact and trying to, reanalyze, look at things again to see what happened. It's surprising how little documentation you see in a lot of cases.
Are not meeting their scheduling requirements. So basically there are delays. I mean, almost no matter how you schedule, how good your planning is, there will be delays no matter how good your plan is, right? Unless you're extremely pessimistic, right? Maybe planning something outrageously wrong, and then all of a sudden you making this right. But this balance to make this within reasonable amount of money, and within reasonable amount of time, that makes it schedules do get delayed. Do you think delays are due to poor scheduling or something else?
Well, I think the scheduling is just a tool to measure the delays, right? What the impacts of delays. It's usually schedulings are not the cause of delays, right? A poor scheduling might, it's not going to cause a delay, but it may make it difficult to analyze a delay. But anybody that's done I'm having a restroom in my home, a toilet that's being remodeled, right? Well, anybody that's done anything like that, every little thing, somebody doesn't show up. There's some parts that you need. There's this that didn't happen, or whatever. There's just that the way delays happen and the types of delays are innumerable. I mean, there's some documents out there that try to categorize all the different types of delays, and there are a lot of different categories. But I mean, you take a small project like that, remodeling a restroom, and then you multiply that times, 1 million square foot of, office space or whatever. It's just, any number of, it's they're going to happen, right? And one of the workshops that I do is just managing that delay process. And the very first part of that is, it's going to happen. So you better get ready for it, right? Getting ready for those delays are a big part of the scheduling process. Is don't go in thinking that this is going to be a home run, right? It's going to be you're going to have delays all over the place.
Hmm. What do you think? What do you think about? Obviously, we cannot avoid AI conversation. I'm sure you've played with this quite a bit by now. Yeah. Sorry. So, what do you think AI will have? What kind of impact AI will have on? I mean, on what you're trying to do. I'm sure you can. We've been playing with this for some time already by feeding schedules to AI models and asking the AI models all sorts of questions. Now, these questions come up. The answers come up pretty good. I mean, the modern AI can analyze fairly complicated dynamic schedule and tell you things like, which typical, which activities will likely delay the schedule, even if they're technically not on the critical path.
Right.
Right. I mean, yeah, the fact that something is not on the critical path doesn't mean that, its lag time is just, a day or so before it gets on critical path. And now you don't have much slack left, in your schedule to have increasingly more activities on the critical path as opposed to what you originally was analyzed as a critical path. So how do you think AI can help us here?
Well, I don't think we realize all the ways that AI is going to help us to start with. I mean, there are so many. Um, I mean, we've already seen just a whole list of things that AI helps. On the dispute resolution side, on the ability to you know to uh, you know look through documents, whatever, right, and just help find things in a document set. That's huge, right? There to be able, like you said, to be able to feed it scheduled data and look at it. And, I think the key to the AI is going to be not so much that you can do AI. Everybody's going to be doing AI on schedule data, right? And that's one of the business challenges for a software company, particularly, that's saying, "Hey, we got these AI tools." Well, everybody's got them. You know what I mean? It's the big challenge is going to be how you're going to implement those, right? How you're going to have different things to look at how they're going to be implemented. What's the cost of implementing a lot of that kind of stuff? I mean, I think it's going to be a very interesting couple of years for sure.
Yeah. Well, we're happy to be technologists in the space of scheduling and project management, and I never felt more compelled with the way it's going or the way it's developing as it is now. To be honest with you,
Yeah.
a lot of things that we had to do, a lot of things that we had to do. Uh, I'll tell you this one. I feel like a lot of methods that we used to do are not gonna be applicable anymore. Such as, for example, pure dynamic scheduling analysis. Yes, we can link everything together, but as I mentioned, we need 3-4 levels deeper analysis as what's the likelihood of the other parallel activities become critical on a schedule.
Sure.
And what kind of the deeper risk analysis, the deeper understanding of the schedule, maybe even cultural differences of the teams working on the project, maybe even differences of approaches of vendors, contractors working on the project. These are things that are adding to equations so much that only new AI models will be able to really tell you, okay, well, based on yada yada, this is what may have happened. And I think this is a lot of interesting stuff, as you say, will
Yeah.
will come out.
Yeah. It's going to be. I mean, I'm having a blast with it. Just to be honest with you, I'm it's just
Tell
fun
me
going through.
how.
Oh, just all of the different ideas that where you can implement AI, from, like you said, trying to analyze a schedule. I mean, it's going to radically change the way, uh, it's going to change the way we do business. I mean, schedules that used to take, I've seen products that are out on the market that you just upload documents and, upload documents and it'll, prompt you and it'll build a schedule for you, right? I don't know if it's any good or not, but it's probably better than starting from scratch. So, I mean, that's going to be a big, and they're all going to get better at doing that. So it's going to, I mean, our space, I believe, is definitely going to be impacted. It's going to be the people, I talk to our consulting team, and I tell them, that I'm still involved in the consulting side of, business, but those guys, you better learn how to use these tools because
Hmm.
otherwise you won't be able to compete. Right. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. John, thank you very much for
Hey,
your
great meeting you, Alex. Yeah.
Yeah, likewise. I'm sure our paths will cross paths. I don't know if you were at the Project Controls this year. You were a couple of years ago. I think you were speaking, weren't you?
In the Project Controls Expo.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Project
plan on
Control
going.
Summit. Project Control Summit.
Oh, the summit. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. I was there this year too. Yeah.
Oh, was you this year too? Oh,
Yeah.
maybe we did cross paths because I was there as well.
Yes.
Um,
Good. That's a good conference.
yeah, it's a good, really good one. Ian, thank you very much for being with us today. Appreciate all the insights and all the experience and sharing all the stories.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Hope you have a great day.
All right, thank you.
Talk to you later.